What up, nerds? My name is Leslie Smith. Welcome to the Nerdy Narrative and another edition of Short Story Saturday. So what all did I read in this last week? Let's start with the one that I forgot last week. I'm so ashamed of myself because when I was wrapping up last week, I'm like, well, if you've been counting, that was 7 stories, so that's the end of this one. And then in editing, I was like, that's only 6. And I went back and looked, and I didn't have my reading glasses on to see my notes. So this week's notes are blown up really large so I don't forget anybody. So first up, let's talk about The Garbage Collectors by Ronald McGilvray from his collection Tales from the Parkland. This story has a trope that I love. I can't remember what they called this trope, but it's the one where the family or the person or the couple moves. It's like a fresh start, maybe the fresh start trope where you pick up everything and you move to another location for some reason or other. I don't know if it's called the fresh start. You know, my friend Kasha has a video about books that are all about that trope. I need to see if I can find it and see what it's called. But this family has moved to this new neighborhood. I want to say they've been there a week or two. Folks aren't unfriendly. They're just a little odd acting. The husband's telling the wife about it. He's like, I go to work and they just look at me. I come home and they're waving. It's just odd. Well, then the kids come home and each of them has heard from their different age groups about the garbage collectors. They choose a family and the parents have to decide which of their 2 children they're going to give up. I can't wait to read more in this collection. The next 2 stories that I read came from Stephen King's Skeleton Crew collection. This is part of a read-along that Jake from the Bookish Drummer is hosting where we are reading through all of Stephen King's short stories. I read 2 this week. The first one is Mrs. Todd's Shortcut. So Mr. and Mrs. Todd had a lake home and they had a groundskeeper who took care of that home for them. And Mrs. Todd was dead set on finding the shortest distance between point A and point B. Anything she could do to save time. She was obsessed with continuously looking at road maps and trying to find shortcut, just shaving off time between driving to the lake house and their house they stayed in the rest of the year. It was a little bit boring in the build-up. It had a few moments that were just really strange, that were almost, it was almost scary. It was almost really good. It was okay. I'm not mad that I read it. Is it my favorite? No, there's too many other really great stories in this one that overshadow it. The other story that I read is called The Jaunt. I would say this one was more of a science fiction story tinged in horror, but it is about a family who is going to Mars and they're going via teleportation. And as a way to keep the kids calm and calm their nerves while they're waiting to teleport, the dad tells them a watered down version of how this method was discovered. It was really good. And Stephen King was very clever in telling us how it was discovered, but he skirted around the ways that he would have to tell it to where he explained it scientifically. I loved it. I love the end. It was, if this were a thing, I could totally see something like this happening. I visualized it. I visualized the ending scene so vividly in my mind. I really enjoyed that. Next, I finally finished the 3 Miles Past collection by Stephen Graham Jones. I read The Coming of the Night. You hear that title and you probably think vampires. Nope, not at all. This was so weird. It was so weird. It's about a traveling salesman who is very much still obsessed with something that happened with him and his brother from when they were younger. It definitely has had a lasting impact on him. And it's one of those where you're not sure what's real, what really happened, or did it happen all in his mind. It's an unreliable narrator. It was just a little too odd for me. I just, I didn't care for it. It's just not a type of story that I really enjoy. In fact, this collection is a skip for me. I doubt I would ever reread it, except for the middle story, No Takebacks. That one was flippin' amazing. I also finished Stuart Sims' collection, Elementals, which is 4 stories of the 4 elements. And this one was about fire. I understand why he saved this one for last, and it is because this is the one that for decades no one had been able to bond to this element. Earth, air, water, those were the ones that everybody went to because the trial to become fire bonded was very, very dangerous. People had attempted it, they had not passed. And then we finally meet this young girl who decides that she wants to do it simply because nobody else had done it in decades. She was very full of pride and ego, but that pride leaves her a burned husk. And it also brings the realization to the forefront of just how futile it was investing in things that don't last. Each of the stories in this collection is around mental health experiences. I loved it. I'm very excited to say that Stuart Sims is working on writing a full-length novel on 1 or 2 of the characters from this collection. I'm going to be keeping my eyes out for that, and you can bet you're going to hear about it on the channel once I get my hands on it. I also got back into my mini tale adventure this week. I read episode 11, Master of Keys. What was most interesting about the story was meeting another character that is cursed like Opaline, cursed to blip through time and space, planet to planet. So the story opens, Opaline is investigating the disappearance of an older gentleman who was tasked with guarding this village. This village was in a forest. A group of ghouls had kind of moved into the area and they were making off with kids. And so with the disappearance of this protector, the villagers are very upset. So Opaline is going to go out and search for this guy, and he's taking 3 of the children who knew this man, knew that he had another secondary cabin out in the woods that he would work from. So they go out there to investigate. And needless to say, as usual, Opaline finds way more than he bargained for, including the Master of Keys. I want to know more about the Master of Keys. I am so intrigued by this character. This particular story is part 1 of 5 of an October Spooky Line event that took place when it first came out, so I can't wait to see what's going to happen in the other 4. I hope I get to see more of the Master of Keys and learn more about that character. And then the final story that I read this week, you know you're going to see Zora Neale Hurston on this channel every week, guys. I read the latest essay called Shouting, and in it, Zora explains what it is and what it means. To put it simply, shouting is an emotional explosion. It's a community event. One person usually starts it, and that's the hardest one to get involved, but once that person releases the pressure, so to speak, it draws in others. And it just builds on itself. It's just like a rippling motion. Shouting is the survival of African possession by the gods. She goes on to list how the different types of shouting comes forth, what it means, and what it looks like. And then after that, she gives us a whole list of examples of the different types. I just absolutely love this collection. I've learned so much. The information that she gives us, because she's writing about it, she's writing about what she knows, what she lives, also what she studied her whole life as an anthropologist. It's just, the information is invaluable. And that's going to wrap it up, guys. That is all of the short stuff that I read this week. I hope you enjoyed hearing about it. I hope something that I talked about interests you into picking it up. If you've read any short stories later, or you have some to recommend to me, drop those in the comments down below. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will catch you in the next one.